invited mentors would have the opportunity to address professionals in the field through the public lectures that we used to do in Belgrade, where the What Should Curating Do is situated. Our annual lecture series in the last 2 years have been done in collaboration with Museum of Contemporary Art in Belgrade. For this very special 2020 year, we are partnering with a number of institutions across different geographies. We are partnering with CCult, a major portal for culture in Serbia and Southeast Europe, as well as Division of Arts and Humanities, Duke University, Kunshan in Shanghai. Lecture is co-streamed to a number of partners platforms, including our regular supporter of the program for the 3rd year, Italian Institute for Culture in Belgrade. This year's lecture series will run through from the November this year to the March next year. We are starting lecture series with Luca Lo Pinto, and Luca was our mentor last year. Within the curatorial program each year, we ask participants of the program to nominate mentor who would they like to hear again for the next year's program. And Luca Inspiring Mentoring Session with participants stays one of the highlights of the last year's program. So we are happy to welcome Luca again. Luca's today lecture is touching on a pressing question that I have been thinking a lot recently, the question of imagining or reimagining. Pandemic has been giving us a reminder that we need new ways of working and being within the world. So are we still able to imagine differently? And I think this is an important question to start with. Luca started the new position earlier this year within the Museum Macro in Rome. And through the way he structured museum program proposes the passage to imagine differently what museum can become, that we will hear more about it from Luca. And before I hand it over to Luca, I will just do a brief introduction. Luca Lo Pinto is Artistic Director of Macro, Museum of Contemporary Art, Rome. From 2014 till 2019, he worked as curator of Consale Vienna. He's the co-founder of magazine and publishing house Nero. At Consale Vienna, he organized solo exhibition of number of artists, and here I'm naming a few: Camille Hinroth, Olaf Nikolaev, and many others. He curated some of the most inspiring group exhibitions that I've seen: Time is Thirsty, Publishing as an Artistic Tool from 1989 to 2017, More Than Just Words, One, No One, and 100,000. Individual series and function follows vision, vision follows realities, among many others. He has written for many catalogs and international magazines. He edited a quite amazing book. If you haven't checked on it, please do. Documenta 1955-2012. The Endless Story of Two Lovers, an artist book by Olaf Nicolai, Luigi Ontani, Emilio Prini, Alexandra Singh, Mario Garcia Torres, and Mario Diacono. In 2014, he published a time capsule publication titled 2014. And before I hand it to Luca, I would like to send my regards to the colleagues from previous program that I see that joined today with us, and I hope you're all well. And just a few things of housekeeping. My colleague Aigerim, who is with us from Astana, she is going to mute us while Luca will be speaking for 35-40 minutes. And then we will have around 20 minutes for the questions. And please put your questions in the chat so we can read them after Luca's presentation. Thank you very much, Luca, for joining.
Thanks. So thanks, Biljana. Thanks for having me. I'm talking from Rome, where we are experiencing the second lockdown, as many of you, I think, all over the places. Unfortunately, we are all together on something where we would have wished not to be together, maybe. But last year I was in Belgrade to give a talk, and it was a sunny day as today in Rome, but of course, unfortunately, I cannot be there. I was thinking that last year my talk was titled Exhibition as Language Space Agency for Contradicting Ideas and Forms and Experiences. And when I gave that talk, I was still working in Vienna as a curator, and let's say that approach to exhibition making was really the main motivation behind what I did there. And so now instead, as Diana said, I'm talking from a different standpoint. Since in January I started to work as an artistic director of this museum, Macro, which is a museum of contemporary art of the city of Rome. It's completely public funded by the municipality. So in a certain way, I could have kept the same title of last year, just replacing the word museum with exhibition. But the reason of the title, Reimagining the Museum, of course, this is a broad title, and this kind of interrogation of what a museum is, could be, was, will be, is an ongoing question from all professionals, all art historians, museum directors, and so on. And so it doesn't want to, sound too kind of pretentious. It's the reason of this title is connected to the way I decided to approach my program at Macro, and what I will discuss today is exactly what I'm trying, and what me and the people working with me, what we are trying to build up here. And so more than reinventing the museum, it's about imagination. Imagination, I think, is an essential toolbox for thinking and being today, in a time where I think all the given structures has been should be a bit left behind us. So even if we don't want, we are forced to have an approach of rethinking. And so my main, as I said, my main focus, my main fascination over the years has been really exploring the potentiality of the exhibition making as a medium. And before Vienna, my experience in Vienna, honestly, I had also a sort of perpetual conflict also with the idea of the institution as a place where I always felt that I always perceive in a sort of negative connotation, being more a sort of confinement for certain artistic attitudes of certain point, more than being a place where you explore freedom of languages. So this sort of skepticism towards the institution as a sort of embodiment of certain power is also, maybe was also the beginning of my of my interrogation, the way I started to work also on the project at Macro. Because when I was asked to make a proposal for the program of the next years, of 3 years, I have a very short mandate. I really started from detaching myself, first of all, and trying to really questioning the concept of a museum and the very same identity of the museum almost with naked eyes. Of course, I had to confront myself with a museum like Macro, which is a museum which has a troubled identity, a troubled history, limited resources in terms of budget, a very complex architecture that I'm going to discuss, and a very short time to develop a program, because 3 years is really nothing for a museum. And so in a certain way, I decided to try to turn all these limitations, restrictions, constraints into opportunities to develop and to activate this interrogation and questioning of a museum as an institution, maybe even in a more radical way of what I could have done in another situation. So Macro, for those who are not familiar with the museum, was open at the end of the 90s, and open not as Macro, but was a museum to house the collection of the municipality of Rome. And shortly after, in 2000, they decided to call it Macro, and then to have a bigger space. So there was an international competition to create a new wing to the museum, and in 2010 it opened in the form you can see today. So when the museum opened at the end of the 90s, opened just in the old wing, and the old wing was a former beer factory which closed in the 70s. So is a museum with a very strange architecture, because it's a bit kind of Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde. The old part is a form of industrial archaeology, and the new one is a completely postmodern type of space, and a very dysfunctional space. So what I decided to do is basically transform the museum into an exhibition project, which is going to last 3 years. So already the first point of the impossibility of approaching such a big task like the one of directing a museum in such a short time, in a way, was overcome. But my idea was really trying to overcome the apparatus, the paradigms of both the museum, the exhibition, and the artwork. So I decided to think and to imagine the museum as a sort of three-dimensional magazine, and the title of this 3 years long project is Museum for Preventive Imagination. And so imagination is really a key word for what I'm doing here. And the Museum for Preventive Imagination actually is an homage to a project made by a group of conceptual artists in Rome in the 70s. And it was a very kind of politically involved group of artists that were basically working in public space through ephemera interventions in the public sphere. So by observing the architecture of the museum, I noticed that in the old part, there were several exhibition rooms of the same size. So there was a certain pattern. So I immediately associate that experience of visiting the space to a magazine structure. So basically, each exhibition room corresponds to a different column of this ideal magazine. And the metaphor of the magazine, I think, is also corresponds and fits well in the way, again, we are living, the type of cultural experience we are today, and the lives we experience is very much kind of fragmented, no? So this idea of the museum as a sort of big novel, a big book that you can read from the beginning to the end is, for me, a bit over, or at least is over in this specific case. And in the last, I would say, 20 years, especially big museums, has started this interrogation of how to find their position in the present, by shifting what a museum was. So the main identity was the collection and a program of exhibitions and maybe a public program. And this was what you could have seen at the Pompidou, for example, when the Pompidou opened in 1977. While today, if you go back to the Pompidou, for instance, you will witness a complete different type of offer, because you can go there to watch a film, to have a very fancy dinner, to visiting an exhibition, to attend a yoga class. I don't know. It's big museums became a sort of ongoing festivals, and and this exactly because they were kind of running after reality, and the reality we are experiencing today, it's completely, we are constantly kind of stimulated by a number of inputs, like visually, in terms of sound, images, words. And so the experience today in a museum is, if you run a museum, you have also to consider how life outside of museum has changed. And Macro is the only museum of contemporary art in Italy which is for free, and this is quite important, and was also another crucial element for the development of the program, because the reason why, especially like younger people, or like let's say, especially younger people, but in general, museum have lost maybe some type of public, is also due to the fact that going to a museum is a sort of is an experience, is an elitarian experience in a certain way. And so today, having a museum for free, I think it's very, very important. It's quite urgent for museums to be free, even if, of course, the idea of being free could raise other type of questions. But a museum today has to confront itself also with cultural offers outside of it. So in a moment where you can subscribe to Spotify or Netflix, to this type of platforms for basically the same price of a ticket for one single experience in a museum, it's quite evident how difficult it is to bring people in. And so having a museum for free in that sense, it's a very important tool, and trying to welcome a different type of public. So I would like to share a screen, my screen, in order to show you a bit better this this idea of this museum as magazine, and voila. I don't know if it's working. Okay, it's working, good. Voila. So the museum, as I said, is divided in different sections, and so these sections of these magazines is they are all based on very specific formats. So as I said, the museum as basically two is made of two bodies, and so the new part is as this huge exhibition space. It's 1,000 square meters. I'm showing you the plan, and here there will be column titled Solo Multi, and here the focus will be mostly on solo exhibitions, with some exceptions of group shows. And the main idea is about pushing artists to think about the exhibition as a work. So this idea of Gesamtkunstwerk, and in the old part of the museum, instead, there will be two types of monographic exhibitions. More the exhibition also, given that the spaces are not so big, will be more kind of focus on certain figures. And in developing the museum, of course, I decided to put on the same level any type of discipline. So the museum is kind of being across disciplines, and medium is really another main kind of specificities of this program. And so one of these two sections, Rhythmics, is about exploring like influential figures from the past, while another sections, which is Polyphony, is about a similar kind of investigation by also including other voices. And so it means that many of the exhibitions happening in these different sections, in the different columns of the magazines, are not static. And so the idea of imposing a rigid editorial grid to the museum, it's just then to allow the improvisation within this grid. And this is the other point, like by having one single exhibition, Museum for Preventive Imagination, from 2020 till the end of 2022, is also a way to surpass, to overcome the idea of even the opening, of having to overcome the idea that an exhibition is like something is an object which open on one day, and after 2 months, let's say, close, and nothing changed within this time. While by adding elements over the course of these projects that we are going to do, is also a way to push people to come back. And this is also thinking that the museum is for free is an important kind of trigger in that sense. And this is, I wanted to do something quite scientific in a way, just to give you a chance to at least imagine the space. Of course, I know that sounds very abstract, but I'm trying to give more to give you more details. And so chamber music, the second floor instead of the old part, the focus will be on mediums that usually are not taken in consideration in museums, or if they are all only happening in a more kind of event-based modalities. And so a room, so an exhibition space of the museum will be focused only on listening to experimental music. So the challenge is trying to exhibit music as art objects with the same attention. So a room will be completely soundproof, and you will have a focus on labels, musicians, and will be like more or less 2 months long. And you don't have anything else, only some sofas, a kind of dark room, and you will only listen to music with a very, very sophisticated sound system. In design, another column is about design, graphic design, and inviting graphic designers that today work in a very, let's say, expanded way. And this is also quite relevant, I think, medium, and so different designers will have carte blanche to present a sort of self-portrait of themselves. And another room is about books, magazines, ephemera, or what is so-called printed matter. And that's another, I think, important element, because as we know, especially from the 60s and 70s, artists has used the medium of publishing has been the medium of publishing has been an essential tool, not only to produce works, but also to find a way to work outside of the market, and to also a way to overcome censorship and so on. So, and in the last 20-30 years, with the new kind of technological developments, more and more artists and new generations of artists has decided to employ the medium of publishing as a sort of kind of tool to make art, or to share knowledge with others. So I thought this is quite important to present, and to have a focus on it. So we'll be again focus on magazines, or books, or it's very, very broad. It could be artist invitations. And another column is called rehearsal, and is about, again, thinking about the museum, where more the museum as a sort of anti-museum, what usually you cannot do in a museum. So improvisation is banned from museums, because it's about really programming. And while I think here it's more about creating a museum, which is not by chance that as an octopus, as an avatar, because this museum is really imagining as a sort of tentacular body, which is able to adapt to different situations. So rehearsal is about exhibition making, and is about inviting artists to present exhibitions where they have a chance to really experiment with that language. So they can present works that are not completely defined. They can produce an exhibition and have the possibility of changing it. So kind of, which is nothing strange in a certain way, but the way the art system work is really about, creating different steps, and you have to follow these steps, and so makes everything more and more rigid. While here is the attempt is make this heavy body, this heavy structure, as soft as possible. And so this is the second floor of the museum. So you have 4 of the last columns that I described on the same floor, and another column, another section of this magazine is called Retro Future, and will be and is dedicated to the collection of the museum. Macro has roughly 1,200 works, mainly of Italian artists from the 60s, 70s till the 90s, I would say. And the collection, when the museum opened, was accessible, but then not anymore, and is on the underground space of the museum. Instead of showing and doing rotations of works, I decided to again interrogating myself on what a collection is, and at the end, works in public collections spend most of their time in their deposits, so they don't see the light. And this idea of thinking about these works from their perspectives, from their eyes, was something that I've been always fascinated. And so I decided to, instead of showing the collection as a physical, the works as a physical objects, I decided more to question also the environment where these works are. So I asked a photographer from Milano called Giovanna Silva to go down in the basement and to take pictures of the deposit, of the works in that type of surroundings. And I will show you later the pictures. So these photos has been blown up, and they are a sort of big wallpaper covering all the walls of the space connecting the old wing to the new wing of the museum. And this big environment will become a sort of huge desktop, which will embrace works by young Italian artists. So this again is in progress, will become a collection in progress of young generation of Italian artists. And this is also, I think, was important because Italy is a country which doesn't have a type of middle-sized institution as you have, for instance, in Europe, in France, Germany, Austria, and so on. So there is not really too much space for young artists to present the works. And the final section is called Agora, and is what usually the public program of the museum is. And the museum opened with the first exhibition in July, and this exhibition, which has been intended as a sort of manifesto of the whole program, titled Editorial, was really an editorial, so an introduction of the magazine. And this exhibition closed in September, and we were planning to open the museum, to unveil the museum in all these editorial structures, so with these many exhibitions according to the different columns, the 3rd of December. But now, of course, we are reconsidering, we have to face the new, this new kind of wave and give a possible also longer lockdown. And so again, imagination is quite important and necessary. And so I will quickly do a tour of this exhibition, so you can also get a feeling of how the space looks like. And I decided to open with a group exhibition for the first time in the history of the museum, taking place all over the spaces, including also the more dysfunctional parts of it, since this architecture is very sort of rhizomatic. And so the idea was like presenting a magazine with almost empty pages, just to give you an idea of what is the container, and without the layout in a certain sense. So it was more inviting and share with me, and what was this experience of rediscovering also the museum. So my main also motivation behind what Macro is trying to do is really placing artists and artist thinkings, and especially artist attitudes, really at the center of the program. So most of the ideas also that as kind of shape the program as really it's this exhibition as in a certain way started from as I was said before, from the idea of the museum as more as a sort of jail, this idea of anti-museum. And it's not by chance that the beginning of the exhibition you had these facts, and this is a fax written sent by Seth Sigelop, an important gallerist, theorist, of curator of that work with that was one of the main also kind of protagonist of the conceptual art movement, and he worked to draft with a lawyer a contract to give artists rights that they didn't have before. And there was a question here, in this is a fax that is sent to all the artists, to that group of artists, so Joseph Kossuth, Carl Andre, Sol LeWitt, and so on. And this question, like number 4, would it be possible for artists to control museum, really strike me. And so of course I'm not an artist, and I don't want to be that, but I think it's really the reason why I do what I do is for artists. So I think that too often, instead, these big kind of devices work. They don't. I'm talking about museum. They don't add something, but very often they sort of become like machines with constant restrictions. So very often, in fact, for artists, like the museums are opportunities to work with bigger budget, bigger space, but in terms of possibility of pushing boundaries is more difficult. So I really what I wanted to remark is how much I've been influenced by discussing artists and trying to inject artist ideas into the way this museum has been imagined. And so this is the big space that will correspond to the solo multi section. And as you see, it's a group exhibition with many different artists, and also quite rhizomatic as the architecture. And this is the space with the pictures from the deposit, from where the works of the Macros collection are. And so this will become the space on these walls that we will hang the works of this kind of future collection. And this was also important to create a dialogue between the old collection and the kind of future one. And so retro future is exactly for that reason. And so this is the old part of the museum. As you see, is a complete different type of architecture. So the idea of imagining a museum divided in different sections where things can constantly change and being updated and being part of just one single bigger kind of framework of a one single exhibition project is also gives like those who are visiting the museum I hope a different kind of can offer a different definition of a museum, because the idea was really trying to perform, to give a sort of performative approach to this device. So another element that I wanted to underline is that for me, especially now, where museums are forced to close due to the pandemic, for instance, the museum could not be intended anymore as an hardware, as these kind of heavy types of architectures, but they should have more flexibility. So, of course, the dichotomy between creating a program, kind of software, which is very kind of performative, that is changing constantly, and instead huge architecture, 10,000 square meters of that kind is almost, that dichotomy sounds almost a contradiction, but is not. And because for me the museum is a software more than hardware, and that is the reason why during the first lockdown the Macro produced an exhibition of Lawrence Wiener, and with this exhibition is an exhibition that I had in mind since a very long time, and was in the middle of the lockdown, where all the museums, all the galleries, everyone was kind of going digital, and I was a bit kind of bored by it, and I thought it was important to do something still in the phenomenological dimension, and so I thought maybe was the good timing for making an unrealized exhibition that they had in mind since 10 years, possible. So I asked Lawrence Wiener to do an exhibition using these aerial banners. So basically, doing an exhibition in the sky. So in the summer, in the coast alongside between like not so far from Rome. So let's say the Roman coast for 100 kilometers. We organized this 10 days exhibition, and every day a different banner. You can see a different banner with a work by Lawrence Wiener in the sky, trained by a plane. And this exhibition is really about what I just said. So that the museum can exist and can produce knowledge everywhere. And of course, as well, the idea of the way we approach also the website and the social media is to treat them as alter spaces. And I wanted to also show you some short footage from the Wiener project, and we are going to produce a book, an artist book, and a film, a documentary, and this is really a preview of the documentary. But I think it's nice to. I think. Sorry, let me see. Can you see the? Can you see my screen? No.
No, for me, image is frozen. I can. How about you?
Yeah, the same.
Okay.
Can you stop your share screen and try again, Luca?
Yeah. Can I? Shall I do it again?
Yeah, try. Let's try. And maybe 5 more minutes.
Okay. Sorry.
So we can. No.
Okay.
It's really inspiring, but I just want. I'm sure that people also have some questions. Can you try sharing the screen?
I don't know what is this.
Yes, now it's good.
Okay. And this is it's the documentary will include. We did lots of also interviews with the people being there, and so the idea of working with an artist as Lawrence Wiener, I think, was given that by the fact that usually these banners they have they advertise many things, but being usually you don't print images on these banners but words. And so thinking about language, I thought immediately about the hymn, and this was since the beginning, since 10 years ago when I had the idea of this exhibition. And I think language is something which kind of is the tool where we relate to each other. So even if the first sight can look like a conceptual and kind of difficult artist to kind of to present in this sort of environment, I thought instead quite the opposite, and the idea that thousands of people could have see a show of Lawrence Wiener that maybe they would never had a chance in their life to do it was really important. And this idea of sorry, I removed the audio. This idea of reaching those who usually they don't visit museums, or they miss like cultural experiences as this, was really important for me to reach them by an exhibition that of course sounds less conventional towards what we are supposed to know, but at the end I think is another example of working with this idea of imagination. So at the end is a sort of maybe kind of a museum, a meta museum, where you can really sort of exploring in a humble way, a different way of playing that role. And so I don't know, I'm open to answer questions, because
Thank you, Luca. It's always inspiring to listen about your work. If anyone has a questions, please just put it in the chat, so we can read. And I just want to thank all of you coming together from different parts of the world. I know for some of you it's very early in Canada over there, because I recognize some names, but I think we have at the moment, Igrim says over 50 people on Facebook, and we have 60 here on the Zoom, which it's really great that so many people came together to hear Luca speaking. So maybe while we are waiting some questions to be typed in, maybe I will start. I have many questions, but okay. Maybe I want to go back to beginning. You said that you kind of, and I know that your work is very much related to artists, and that this inspiration for like a 3 years long exhibition came from artists that you just mentioned very briefly. So maybe can you speak a little bit more about the reference that you briefly mentioned in relation to the Museum for Preventive Imagination?
Yes. there was this group of artists who founded actually a project which was called Ufficio per l'immaginazione preventiva, Office for Preventive Imagination. And these artists, I think, they also produce a magazine, different publications, and let's say that if in their case it was really like the political aspect was really like explicit, I was more kind of I took it as a reference more on this on the approach that they had, on the approach that on an artwork and an exhibition, and therefore also a museum, there are no rules. That's basically what I believe. And when you have no rules, you should be free to imagine also different models. And so my main inspiration was also, I found it also a great statement for kind of, describing my intent.
Thank you. We have a first question from Penelope. Thank you. She says, hello and thank you for this presentation. What inspired to organize this exhibition like a magazine? What is the logic and message behind this choice?
Yeah, so it's not only the exhibition, but the exhibition and the museum. As I said, there are different reasons. One was about observing the specific architecture of this museum, that these rooms repeating, so there is a pattern in terms of rhythms of having identical space coming. So, and I don't know why, but I work very much in this kind of intuitive way. So sometimes I don't know how to explain rationally things, but I had this vision of imagining like these big museums as a sort of publications where you had divided in different sections. So so this was a way of also helping me and imagining me as a visitor to deal with such a gigantic space where I always feel lost. And this is also a common experience we have in big museums, in this type of huge architecture, that you enter and you feel completely lost. So you see some things, but so the experience is also, it's quite weird. And I think this goes instead against what the museum thinks, the type of experience that the museum thinks to offer, which museums tend to be, they work in a very linear way. They think that really a visitor would experience the museum from A to Z, but this has never happened. So this fragmentation of the magazine is also a way to offer those who will come a way to see something specific and then to live, and they don't lose any tracks, because is in a museum, if you intended the museum as a sort of long novel, if you enter in the middle, you're completely lost. Instead, if it's these chapters, they can live on their own. You can just read a chapter and leave the book, and that's I think is another reason behind this magazine or editorial idea, because our lives are completely fragmented. We don't have this kind of this unity. It's really missing, Do you think commercial galleries can also invent?
Yeah, from Anya, you can see galleries can reinvent themselves and have a broader approach in the program, use their space for more engaging and immersive experience, and perhaps more as a think tank and educational platform.
I mean, yes, of course. I mean, I have so much troubles of thinking of how to reinvent this that I didn't consider also commercial galleries. But honestly, it's a good moment, I think, in history to do a kind of to create new paradigms, maybe, or yeah, to present new models of working, and but at the same time, honestly, I feel that it's a the artwork is also something that use the rhetoric of of this kind of being open to new changes, but then there is nothing to change, in the sense that nothing is changing in a deep sense. During the pandemic, there were just like works that were produced for the physical space were shown in a virtual space. So that thing, nothing, there was not really a way to rethinking, the artworks were already sold most of the time by sending images or a portfolio. So in a certain way, it was like that before. I think it's more. I think would be good to think in a more systematic way. And again, artists has shown great examples, because like Mariam Bennani produced an incredible series of videos during the lockdown. I don't know, David Lamelas reinvented and did in a different way, reenacted in a different way, is legendary performance Time, and so on. So I think artists are always kind of the main source to really kind of rethink. So if I was a gallerist, I would also initiate a dialogue, a kind of straightforward dialogue with those who then are the main protagonists. And of course, for certain for the educational activities, this can work, like what we are doing today. It can work even if you miss so many elements that, of course, you have lots and pros and cons in terms of educations. But again, what I think the wrong way to follow is just to translate something to something else without thinking specifically about that context. So I'm not against producing exhibitions also in a digital dimension, but you have to do it having in your mind that, and thinking in a different way, not thinking to be in a physical space and then translating, because that's producing something which is completely, a failure that is not interesting failure, because failure is another element of this program at Macro. Is an attempt to do something where I don't know what will come up out of it. And I was wondering.
Yeah, we have a question from Irene. Thanks for presentation and congratulations again for the curatorial project. Question is, I was wondering, within editorial exhibition vision, what role does the public play within? How do you engage the local community in exhibition activities? What dialogue do you plan to initiate with the territory to which the museum refers?
The role of the public, of the visitor, is crucial, and actually it's in the structure of the sections. And if we keep the metaphor of reading, it's about once you enter in a museum like this, imagine these different sections, and you have content so different, because here is also about how, when you have to present the work of a poet, of a musician, of you have to present a magazine, you have also to question what's the best way to translate this into an exhibition language. So I think it's up to the viewer, I mean, to kind of navigate through these contents and to create their own kind of layout of it. So the fact that it's completely rhizomatic, and you have such a, because apparently you don't see a thread among the different contents you will see. But this is really the point, you know. And again, with the inaugural exhibition, instead of having the classical captions with the descriptions of the works, we ask artists to write the captions. And this is also for the audience, for the people, for the visiting a show. Usually you prefer always the shortcut, you know. So a description is something that it's the easy way. But I think instead, I do not like thinking the museum as a sort of judgmental voice, authoritarian voice that has to explain you, you know, and basically preventing you from the possibility of having your own opinion about that. So for me, it's really about to stress how different, how in how many different ways we can look at things. And about the territory, again, the exhibition of Lawrence Wiener is also a way to go out of the museum and to think not only about the city, but thinking about also smaller kind of towns, and really trying to embrace a wider audience. The other, how, and this is also I'm going to the next question, which is about that the free entrance, of course, gives a possibility to have. It's a great thing, but it could be not the ultimate tool to, you know, or strategy to attract new visitors. Again, in that sense, it's important to mention the identity of the museum. I briefly mentioned it before. I worked with the graphic designer Marco Campardo to develop an identity where the museum could have an avatar to represent it, and this avatar is an octopus, and the octopus was chosen not only because it's the animal of the is the icon of, also, I don't know, I think about Donna Haraway and so on, but it's also very well is a perfect portrait of a project which is one single thing and then extended in different sections, in different tentacles. So we decided to promote the museum with a public campaign, quite strong, with only the octopus, Museum for Preventive Imagination, and this was very, very strong. And this was also a way to invite people, because if you write like names of artists or so on, most of the people, if you write any of the artists, they don't, you know, it doesn't sound a click. And the other thing we did, since the title of the first exhibition was editorial, and I really thought about, you know, what also the city, the museum is, and Rome is a big city with lots of international communities, and so we decided to have the title translated in the 5 most spoken languages in the world. So it was in Hindi, Spanish, Arabic, and also this is about the way we want to present ourselves is really talking in also in not only in English and Italian, but in many different languages, and to use a sort of way of communicating which can help also those who felt or usually are feeling kind of excluded by that.
Thank you. This was a question from Seda. Seda, nice to see you here. And I think Lucy Chen question you already to a certain extent answered in a way.
Yeah, because I know that I understand that it's very abstract and it's complicated to imagine what is going to be, because I think a question like that, once you will see this idea applied to the space, you will understand what's the difference is. I think I already explained it, but I just wanted to also to add that in front of each exhibition space, you will have a sort of big cover with written the title of the section and a short description, like the one I showed you before in the PDF, on the PDF, and the same that you have in the website. And same with the way we are using social media. We are not using Instagram to promote content related to the exhibition. We do, but it's not the main focus. The main focus is really working, also presenting a number of very kind of defined projects. So now is the last one was about questioning the role of public art, and this also presenting images of different public artworks, from the great ones to the cheap ones. Consider publishing this magazine after the 3 years of the exhibition.
Maybe this is a beautiful question to end up with. Thank you, Crystal, for asking.
It's a good question, because I don't know what you mean with publishing. Is about giving to such an ephemeral project a sort of solidity, or I don't know. We can lose in the metaphor, or it's more about really publishing, how to publish something to document the exhibition.
Can you unmute yourself, please, and elaborate? Thanks. Oh, maybe I get in. Can you try unmuting? Thanks.
Hi. Are you hearing me? Yeah.
Yes.
Hi, Crystal.
Yeah, I was just going forward with the metaphor and the idea that you had as this displacement of the museum as being a magazine, as having different columns, and I was just wondering if there would be at the end of the 3 year of the project a moment where you would actually publish it as saying making public this kind of like all of those columns, or like printing it in this way of like just collecting all of those parts in some way.
Honestly, you're not the first person asking me this, and I didn't. I have at the moment I have not a clear idea on how to document it, or whether to do it. Because I also like to imagine all this experience as a sort of firework that could stay only in the retina of your eye. And so being ephemeral is also something which goes against the, again, the idea of a museum. You know, the museum is very much about keeping and for the future, but I think, again, the reality has shown us things that can vanish from one day to another. So this feeling precarious all the time is very much linked to what I wanted to say, that this, I'm not talking only about art, you know, I'm talking about life. And this came in also from a reflection of a state of being. And so should be publishing in a defined form, could in a certain way goes against to the same idea of, you know, of having something strong, powerful that you cannot get completely in that moment, but will stay in your memory. I prefer to think something like that, and which, yeah, maybe is a different idea of a museum, and but I think it's a moment where if you want to propose kind of alternative models, you have to question in a very radical way things, you know. I don't know, before Diana wrote me about what was this museum, the artists who at this museum that they decide to let it go without conserving a house museum. The house museum of Edward Krasinski, in Warsaw is a perfect example. They decide the house where Krasinski lived together with Henry Stajewski, and its apartment is a sort of mise en scène with different interventions, works very, very fragile, and Foxal Gallery Foundation is taking care of the place. They decide to not to let the place experiences a process of natural decay. And this is quite a strong thing, because on one hand, if museum would haven't existed, we then would have been a chance to see and discover our past. At the same time, especially when we work with the contemporary art field and artists, sometimes you also doubt if all the artists were really keen on approaching the idea of a work as a fixed thing. And more artists actually are showing and are working with a non-human dimension. They work in a more process-based thing where, you know, things can change constantly. So this idea of thinking an object in a more kind of organic way it's really a fundamental part of the way the museum has been conceived. So I don't know. Today I would say no, nothing.
Okay, thank you so much, Luca, for a presentation and generosity with the time, because we are way behind our schedule. I need to call it an end, and thank you all for coming to the program. And our next lecture will be on November 28th by Susanna Milewska at the same time, which is mine, 10 p.m. in Melbourne and noontime in Belgrade, 6 a.m. in Canada and US. And Luca, then we will see you at the workshop next week. Thank you so much.
Great, thanks. Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.
And thank you, Aigerim, for everything.
Thank you for all of you, and bye-bye. See you.